The maintenance tunnel smelled like grease and recycled air. Danny Foster lay on his back underneath a water filtration panel, holding a wrench he hadn't used in 20 minutes. His earbuds played an old song from Earth, something with guitars and a steady drum beat that made him want to close his eyes. He'd been supposed to tighten 3 bolts an hour ago, but the music felt more important right now. Research Station Horizon 7 hummed around him with the usual sounds of 47 people going about their work. Scientists studied the gas giant below. Engineers kept systems running. Security guards walked their routes. Everyone had a purpose, a schedule, a reason for being there. Danny had been brought along because his guardian needed cheap labor, and Danny had nowhere else to go. He scraped by with barely passing grades and a reputation for being slow. Most people forgot he existed until something needed cleaning or a simple repair needed doing. His guardian, the head engineer, had stopped expecting much from him months ago. Do the basic tasks. Stay out of trouble. Try not to break anything. Danny could manage that most days. Today he was supposed to check all the panels in Section C, but he'd only made it through 2 before getting distracted by his music player. The 3rd song had been really good, so he'd played it again. Then again, now he was on the 7th repeat and thinking maybe he should learn to play guitar someday. The station's intercom crackled. Danny didn't notice. His music was too loud. In the main hub, 3 levels above Danny's tunnel, something impossible happened. The air rippled like heat waves over summer pavement. 2 shapes pushed through reality itself, bypassing every security measure, every locked door, every protective field the station had installed. They materialized in the central corridor where Dr. Helen Okafor had been reviewing data on her tablet. She looked up. Her mind, brilliant and quick, immediately began cataloging what she saw. The creatures appeared as masses of flowing darkness like oil suspended in zero gravity. Inside each one, a crystalline core rotated slowly, pulsing with deep purple light. Her training kicked in. She accessed her neural implant, sending emergency signals. Classification, Class Alpha X. Threat level, extinction event. Survival probability, 0. The creatures sensed her thoughts, her racing mind calculating escape routes and survival strategies. The nearest one flowed toward her. She tried to run. Her legs managed 3 steps before the creature enveloped her. The scream lasted less than a second. Alarms shrieked through the station. Red emergency lights bathed every corridor in blood-colored warning. The station's AI, programmed to assist in crisis situations, began calculating optimal evacuation routes. Security teams mobilized, their augmented bodies and tactical training putting them in motion within seconds. Every person on Horizon 7 became suddenly terribly aware of the danger, except Danny. His 7th repeat of the song ended. He thought about playing it again but decided to move on to the next track. This one had a nice bass line. He nodded his head along with the rhythm and finally remembered he should probably tighten those bolts. He picked up the wrench and reached for the first bolt. It was already tight. Someone must have done it yesterday. He checked the other 2, also tight. Well, that made his job easier. He pulled himself out from under the panel and stood up, stretching. His knees popped. He was 16 but felt older after spending months crawling through tight spaces. The station's lighting looked different, but Danny figured someone was testing the backup systems again. They did that sometimes. Above him, the creatures moved through Horizon 7 like sharks through water. Security Chief Rodriguez had 30 years of combat experience. His neural implants gave him reflexes faster than natural human limits. He organized his team with military precision, setting up defensive positions, calculating firing angles, planning tactical retreats. His mind worked like a battle computer. The first creature found him in 4 minutes. It phased through his defensive barrier as if it didn't exist. Rodriguez's last thought was realizing that his intelligence had made him a target. The scientists tried everything their education could provide. Dr. Lee, a neurologist, induced a meditative trance state, slowing her brain activity to minimal levels. It worked for 6 minutes. The creature sensed the intentional nature of her calm and found her anyway. Engineer Ramos shut down his neural implant and lay perfectly still, trying to mimic death. The creature knew the difference between a corpse and a living mind pretending to be one. Danny reached the end of the maintenance tunnel and opened the access hatch. He needed to check the panel logs at the maintenance station, but he couldn't remember where he'd left his datapad. Probably in the cafeteria. He'd been eating lunch when the call came to fix the water panel. Or was that yesterday? Time got fuzzy when every day was the same. He walked down the corridor, still humming along to his music. The emergency lights painted everything red, but Danny thought it looked kind of nice. Different. Maybe they were trying out a new color scheme. The station designers change things sometimes to prevent monotony on long missions. A body lay crumpled against the wall ahead. Danny's mind registered it the way it registered most things that didn't immediately concern him. Something was there. Someone was sleeping in a weird place. People did strange things sometimes. He stepped around it and kept walking. The second creature flowed through the wall beside him. Its crystalline core rotated, scanning for neural activity. It detected Danny's presence, measured his brain patterns, analyzed his thoughts. The core pulsed once, twice, then rotated away. Danny scratched his ear and adjusted his earbuds. The left one always slipped out if he didn't push it in properly. Lieutenant Shaw watched through the command center cameras. She'd barricaded herself inside with 4 others. They watched Danny walk past the creature, watched the creature ignore him, watched Danny continue down the corridor like he was taking a casual stroll. Shaw's tactical mind tried to understand it. Was he using some kind of stealth technology? A neural dampener? Some classified training? He's not even moving cautiously, whispered Ensign Park. He's just walking. Shaw studied Danny's face on the monitor. No fear, no awareness, no strategy. The boy looked slightly bored. We need to get to him, Shaw said. Figure out what he's doing. Use it ourselves. But as she formed the plan, as her mind raced through tactics and probabilities, the creature that had passed Danny turned its attention toward the command center. It had found more interesting prey. Minds that thought, calculated, strategized. Minds that burned bright with awareness and intelligence. Danny reached the cafeteria. The lights were off, which was weird. He felt along the wall for the switch and flipped it. The overhead panels flickered on, revealing overturned tables and scattered equipment. Someone had made a mess. He hoped he wouldn't be the one asked to clean it up. That would take forever. His datapad sat on the counter where he'd left it. He picked it up and checked the time. His shift ended in 2 hours. Maybe after that he could listen to music in his quarters without anyone telling him to get back to work. That sounded nice. Behind him, the creature passed by the cafeteria entrance, its core blazing with purple light. It had just consumed the command center. 5 brilliant tactical minds in less than 30 seconds. It moved on to find more. Danny found a packaged meal in the dispenser and heated it up. The station felt quieter than usual. Probably everyone was busy with whatever project had them running around. People on Horizon 7 always seemed to be rushing somewhere, doing something important. Danny never understood the hurry. The work would still be there tomorrow. He ate his meal slowly, scrolling through his music library, picking songs for later. His earbuds played something soft now, almost sleepy. Outside the cafeteria, both creatures hunted through the station, drawn to every mind that recognized danger, that planned escape, that fought to survive. Danny finished eating and tossed the container in the recycler. He should probably get back to work. There were other panels to check in Section D, or was it Section E? He pulled up the work order on his datapad. Section D. Right. He walked back into the corridor, humming quietly, completely alone on a station that had held 47 people that morning. The creatures had taken 46. Only Danny remained, wandering through the red-lit halls, wondering vaguely where everyone had gone, thinking mostly about music and whether he'd remembered to tighten those bolts after all. Danny found the problem with panel D7 after 10 minutes of staring at it. One of the indicator lights was flickering. Not broken, just annoying. He could ignore it and mark the panel as functional, or he could try to fix it. The second option meant climbing into a tight access space and probably bumping his head. The first option meant he could go back to his quarters early. He chose to fix it. Not because of any sense of duty, but because the flickering bothered him. It was like a skip in a song, something irregular that his mind couldn't quite ignore. He pulled open the access panel and squeezed himself into the narrow space behind it. The station's AI, still functioning despite the carnage, tracked the 2 creatures as they moved through different sections. Its programming screamed warnings into empty corridors. It tried to guide survivors to safety, calculating the fastest routes to the escape pods. 3 people had listened to its advice. All 3 had died thinking strategically about their escape, their minds lighting up like beacons for the hunters. Dr. Helen Okafor had been the station's lead xenobiologist. Before the creature took her, she'd managed to transmit a partial analysis. Class Alpha X entities fed on neural energy. The more complex the thought patterns, the more attractive the prey. They were drawn to intelligence, to awareness, to the kind of consciousness that could contemplate its own existence and plan for the future. Her last transmission had been cut short, but the data now sat in the station's computer waiting for someone to read it. Danny wouldn't have understood it anyway. He'd never been good at science. Too many big words that all seemed to mean the same thing. He focused on the flickering light, tracing the wire back to a loose connection. Easy fix. He tightened it with his fingers and the flickering stopped. Better. The first creature drifted through the medical bay, searching. It had consumed 33 humans so far, each one a burst of complex neural energy. The crystalline core inside its dark mass pulsed with satisfaction, but it was still hunting, still drawn by the flavor of intelligent thought. It sensed something nearby, a presence, but the signature was wrong. Too dim, too simple, like background noise. Danny emerged from the access panel and checked his work. The light glowed steady now. He marked the panel as complete in his datapad and looked for the next one on the list. His stomach rumbled. He'd eaten an hour ago, but the meal packs never quite filled him up. Maybe there were snacks in the storage room near Section E. He walked through corridors painted in emergency red. The silence should have registered as strange. Normally the station hummed with conversation, footsteps, the ping of messages on personal devices. Danny noticed the quiet the way he noticed most things, as a vague impression that drifted through his mind and then faded. Quiet was fine. Less distraction from his music. In the command center, now empty except for bodies, Lieutenant Shaw's final log entry played on a loop. Can't understand the pattern. The creatures ignore basic automation, don't respond to simple AI, they only hunt. They only hunt us. The ones who think, the ones who plan. If you're hearing this, don't try to outsmart them. Don't try anything. Just, the log ended there. Shaw had been in the middle of a brilliant tactical analysis when the creature found her. Danny reached the storage room and found it locked. He tried his access code. Red light. His code didn't work for this door. He tried to remember if he was supposed to have access to storage rooms. Probably not. They didn't trust him with much beyond basic maintenance. He shrugged and kept walking. The snacks weren't that important. The second creature phased through a wall ahead of him, its massive form filling the corridor. The crystalline core rotated in his direction. Danny stopped walking, not because he understood the danger, but because something big was blocking his path. He waited for it to move, the way he'd wait for a slow-walking person to get out of the way in a crowded space. The creature's core pulsed, scanning. It detected life signs, breathed air, a beating heart, but the neural signature barely registered above baseline. No fear response, no tactical assessment, no survival planning. The boy's mind was occupied with something trivial, something about food and why doors wouldn't open. Simple irritation. Present moment awareness with no projection into future scenarios. The creature shifted to the side, flowing along the wall like liquid shadow. Danny nodded slightly, a gesture of thanks he'd probably learned from being around polite people, and continued walking. Behind him, the creature paused, its core rotating back to scan him again. The signature remained unchanged. Uninteresting. It moved on to search for better prey. Danny found another maintenance panel in Section E. This one monitored air pressure in the eastern modules. He ran the diagnostic, which took 3 minutes, and discovered everything was functioning normally. He marked it complete. 2 more panels and his shift would be over. He could go back to his quarters, lie on his bunk, and listen to music until he fell asleep. Simple plan. Comfortable plan. In the science labs, Engineer Ramos had survived by hiding inside a supply closet. His neural implant was shut down, his breathing slow and controlled. He'd read about meditation techniques, about achieving a state of thoughtless awareness. He tried to empty his mind, to become nothing but a biological machine performing basic functions. He lasted 11 minutes. The problem was the trying. His mind kept checking if the technique was working, kept calculating time, kept planning the next step. Each thought, each analysis, each moment of strategic consciousness made him slightly more visible. The creature found him because he couldn't stop being intelligent. Even in silence, even in stillness, his mind worked. That was what made him human, what made him capable. It was also what killed him. Danny sat down on the floor outside panel E9. His back hurt from all the crawling through tight spaces. He figured he could take a short break. No one was around to tell him to get back to work. He pulled out his music player and switched to a different playlist, something with slower songs. His eyes drifted closed. Both creatures met in the central hub where their hunt had begun. They communicated in ways beyond human understanding, sharing information about the station. The hunt was complete. Every intelligent mind had been consumed. Every consciousness that recognized danger, that planned and schemed and thought about survival, was gone. The neural energy would sustain them for weeks, but one signature remained. That dim, uninteresting presence that barely qualified as conscious thought. Both creatures had encountered it multiple times. Both had dismissed it as irrelevant. It wasn't worth the energy to consume. Like a human might ignore an insect, the creatures ignored Danny. He existed below their threshold of interest. They prepared to leave, to phase back into the dimensional space between realities. Their presence on this station had served its purpose. The feeding was done. Danny woke up from his short nap. His music was still playing. He'd been asleep for maybe 20 minutes. He stood up, stretched, and checked his datapad for the next task. Panel E9 still needed inspection. He opened the access cover and looked inside. Everything seemed fine, but he was supposed to check the connections anyway. He reached in with his wrench. The station's reactor, damaged during the attack by the creatures phasing through critical systems, began showing warning signs. The AI registered the problem and started automatic containment procedures. In 30 minutes, the procedures would fail. In 40 minutes, the reactor would breach. In 50 minutes, Horizon 7 would be debris scattered across the orbit of the gas giant. Danny didn't know about reactors or containment procedures. He tightened a connection that didn't need tightening and marked the panel as complete. That was the last one on his list. Shift over. He could go relax now. He walked back toward his quarters, taking the long route because the short route had a funny smell he didn't like. The station felt different somehow, but he couldn't quite figure out why. Empty, maybe. He passed by the command center and glanced through the window out of idle curiosity. People were lying on the floor in weird positions. Sleeping during work hours seemed like a bad idea. Someone was going to get in trouble for that. He reached his quarters and palmed the door open. His bunk looked inviting. He lay down, adjusted his earbuds, and closed his eyes. The music washed over him. A simple melody that didn't demand anything except listening. He thought about nothing in particular. What to eat later. Whether his music player needed charging. If he'd finished all his work for the day. Small thoughts, immediate thoughts. Thoughts that rose and fell like gentle waves. 8 sectors away, a Galactic Union patrol detected the distress signal from Horizon 7. They changed course immediately. Class Alpha X entities were rare, but when they appeared, they left no survivors. The patrol's mission was simple. Contain the area, wait for the creatures to leave, recover any data that might explain the attack, then file the report that would add another incident to the Alpha X database. No one expected to find survivors. The galaxy's records showed 0 survival rate across 12 previous encounters. When the patrol's sensors detected one human life sign still moving through the station, still alive after hours of exposure to 2 Alpha X entities, the crew went silent. It was impossible, yet the data didn't lie. Someone was still alive on Horizon 7. Someone was wandering through corridors filled with the dead, walking past the greatest predators the galaxy had ever classified, and somehow, impossibly, surviving. Danny turned up his music slightly and let himself drift toward sleep. He had no idea that 8 ships were racing toward him. He had no idea about the reactor counting down to failure. He had no idea that he'd become the first human to survive a Class Alpha X encounter, that his continued existence was rewriting everything the galaxy thought it knew about these creatures. He only knew that his bunk was comfortable. His music was good, and tomorrow he'd have to check more panels. Simple thoughts for a simple day. In a galaxy that valued intelligence above all else, Danny Foster survived by being unremarkable. He didn't plan to survive. He didn't try to survive. He just existed, moment by moment, unaware that his very lack of awareness had saved his life. Fleet Commander Arya Sato stared at the sensor display like it had personally insulted her. The screen showed one human biosignature moving through Horizon 7, walking at a casual pace, very much alive. Around her, the bridge of the destroyer Swift Justice hummed with confused activity. 8 ships had responded to the distress signal. 8 ships full of experienced officers who knew exactly what Class Alpha X meant. And every single one of them was looking at the same impossible data. "Run the scan again," Arya said. "Full spectrum. Check for equipment malfunction." "Already did, Commander," her sensor officer replied. 3 times. Same result. 1 human alive moving through Section E. Vital signs are normal. No distress indicators. No elevated heart rate. "He's just walking." Arya's jaw tightened. She'd been in the Union military for 15 years. She'd seen combat against species that could crush ships with gravity manipulation. She'd survived boarding actions and ship-to-ship battles that left hulls glowing with residual energy. But Alpha X entities were different. They weren't just dangerous. They were final. When they appeared, everyone died. That was the rule, the pattern, the absolutely consistent data across 12 previous encounters. "How long has he been exposed?" she asked. "Based on the initial distress signal, approximately 4 hours and 50 minutes. Impossible. The longest recorded survival time was 7 minutes, and that person had been inside a specially shielded panic room. This human was just wandering around like nothing was wrong." Rook, the avian containment specialist from Kepler Fleet, appeared on the communication screen. His feathers were ruffled, a sign of agitation in his species. "Commander Sato, I am formally recommending we maintain our distance and observe only. Attempting rescue during an Alpha X event is suicide. We wait for the entities to depart." "There's still a human alive in there," Arya said. "Not for long. The station's reactor is failing. I'm reading a cascade failure in the containment system. That station will explode in approximately 43 minutes. Arya pulled up the visual feed from their long-range cameras. Horizon 7 hung in space. Running lights still glowing, looking almost normal except for the lack of any escape pods in the launch bay. She could make out the shape through the enhanced imaging. Count the modules. See the scars where the creatures had torn through the hull. And somewhere inside that dying station, one human walked around unaware or uncaring that he was living on borrowed time. "Can we see him?" Arya asked. "Visual confirmation?" Her communications officer worked the controls, patching through the station's internal cameras. "Most are offline, but I've got one in Section E corridor." The screen flickered and showed a young man walking down a hallway. He wore the standard maintenance coveralls of a station worker. His dark hair was messy, like he'd just woken up. He had earbuds in, and even through the camera feed, Arya could see his head bobbing slightly to whatever music he was listening to. He looked bored, maybe a little tired, completely, utterly unafraid. "What is he doing?" Rook demanded. "Does he not understand the situation?" "I don't think he knows there is a situation," Arya said quietly. She'd seen a lot of reactions to danger in her career. Fear, anger, determination, panic. She'd never seen this. Pure oblivious calm. Dr. Parrish, the fleet's xenopsychologist, leaned forward at his station. He'd been reviewing all the camera footage since the attack began. 4 hours of recordings. Watching the creatures hunt through Horizon 7. Watching them consume every person who tried to survive. And watching this one young man walk past them, around them, through corridors they'd just cleared, never once registering as interesting prey. "I need to review the behavioral data," Parrish said. "But I'm forming a hypothesis." "Commander, those creatures hunt intelligence, complex thought patterns, strategic awareness. This young man appears to have none of those qualities actively engaged. You're saying he's surviving because he's not smart enough?" Rook's feathers ruffled more dramatically. "Not exactly. I'm saying his mind isn't operating in a way that registers as prey. Watch this footage." Parrish transferred a clip to the main screen. It showed Danny standing in a corridor, while one of the creatures flowed past him less than 2 meters away. "Look at his body language. No fear response. No tactical assessment. He's annoyed that something is blocking his path. That's it. Present moment irritation. No future projection. No survival planning. His mind is operating below the frequency that attracts these entities." Arya watched the clip 3 times. The creature clearly detected the human. Its crystalline core rotated toward him, scanned him, then dismissed him. Like he wasn't worth the effort. "Can we use this?" she asked. "Can we train people to replicate his mental state?" "No," Parrish said immediately. "The act of trying would defeat the purpose. These creatures sense intention. They sense the strategic mind working. If you try to think like him, you're thinking strategically about not thinking strategically. You become visible immediately. So he's surviving by accident. Completely. Arya checked the countdown. 38 minutes until reactor failure. She looked at the screen showing Danny, who had stopped to adjust his earbuds. He was picking at one of them like it wasn't sitting right. The station was dying around him. Two of the galaxy's most dangerous predators were somewhere on board and he was fixing his earbuds. "We have to get him out," Arya said. "Impossible," Rook countered. "Any rescue attempt requires strategic planning, tactical awareness, combat readiness, everything that attracts Alpha X entities. You would die before reaching him. Then we guide him out remotely. Use the station's systems to direct him to an escape pod." Parrish shook his head. The moment he starts following instructions with purpose, the moment he thinks strategically about escape, he becomes visible. They'll take him. Arya felt frustration building. She hadn't lost people under her command in 3 years. She'd gotten good at her job by planning carefully, thinking tactically, always staying 3 steps ahead. Those were the exact qualities that would get her killed on that station. "What does he respond to?" she asked. "What makes him move?" Parrish pulled up more footage. "He follows very simple patterns. Basic needs. He went to the cafeteria when hungry. He returned to his quarters when tired. He responds to immediate comfort, not future planning. Watch this segment." The screen showed Danny stopping in front of a locked door, trying his access code, then simply walking away when it didn't work. No frustration. No problem solving. Just acceptance and redirection to something else. "He doesn't fight against obstacles," Parrish continued. "He flows around them. No complicated planning. Just moment-to-moment decisions based on immediate comfort and simple preferences." "Music," Arya said suddenly. "He's always listening to music." "What if we use that?" "Explain. We hack the station's systems. Create a trail of his music leading to the escape bay. He follows the music without thinking about why. It's just pleasant, so he goes toward it." Parrish considered this. It might work, if the music simply plays and he follows it, because he wants to hear it better, not because he's been instructed to escape. The intention has to be his own, immediate and simple. "Do it," Arya ordered. Her technical team worked quickly, breaking through the station's security, accessing the public address system. They pulled music files from the station's entertainment database. Old Earth songs, the kind that had been popular decades ago. Simple melodies, clear rhythms. "Playing track 1 in Section E," her communications officer announced. "It's starting to play near his current location." On screen, Danny stopped walking. His head tilted slightly like a dog hearing a distant sound. The music from the station speakers was the same song he'd been listening to on his personal device. He pulled out his earbuds to hear it better. The song was coming from somewhere down the corridor toward the central hub. He started walking that way, following the sound. Not because he understood it was a trail. Not because he knew someone was trying to save him. Just because the music sounded nice and he wanted to hear it more clearly. "Next song," Arya said. "Lead him toward the escape bay." They played another track, this one positioned closer to the route they needed him to follow. Danny kept walking, his pace unchanged, his expression relaxed. He was enjoying the impromptu concert. "Commander," her sensor officer called out. "I'm detecting both Alpha X entities. They're converging on the central hub, right in his path." Arya's stomach dropped. Parrish if he encounters them again. As long as his mental state doesn't change, he should be fine. They've ignored him before. But if something triggers strategic thinking, if he suddenly understands the danger... Danny turned a corner and entered the central hub. Both creatures were there, their massive forms of flowing darkness filling the space. Their crystalline cores pulsed with purple light. They were communicating in their own way, preparing to leave the station. Danny saw them. For the first time, he really looked at them. His mind, simple and direct, processed what he saw. Big things, dark, kind of pretty with the glowing parts. They were blocking the corridor where the music was coming from. He stopped walking and waited politely for them to move. On the Swift Justice, every person on the bridge held their breath. The creature's cores rotated toward Danny. They scanned him again, this time with what seemed like curiosity. One of them shifted closer, its form flowing through the air like smoke underwater. Danny stood still. He wasn't frozen in fear. He was just waiting. In his mind, there was no panic, no survival instinct kicking in. Just a patient acceptance that sometimes things were in your way and you had to wait for them to move. Like waiting for an elevator or standing in line at the cafeteria. The creature's core pulsed brightly, casting purple light across Danny's face. He blinked. The light was pretty bright. Kind of annoying, actually. His expression shifted to mild irritation. The creature withdrew. Both entities moved toward the far wall of the hub, their forms beginning to shimmer as they prepared to phase out of normal space. Danny, no longer blocked, continued walking toward where the music was playing. He rounded the corner and the song changed to another track. He smiled slightly. This was a good one. He's past them, the sensor officer said, his voice filled with disbelief. He's heading toward the escape bay. Keep playing the music, Arya ordered. Don't stop. They played song after song, creating a path through Horizon 7. Danny followed, humming along, occasionally stopping to listen to a particularly good chorus. He had no idea he was being rescued. He just liked the music and had nothing better to do than follow it. 22 minutes until reactor failure. Danny was 3 corridors away from the escape bay. The creatures had fully phased out, returning to whatever dimensional space they came from. The station was clear. All they had to do was get Danny into a pod and launch him before the reactor went critical. Final song, Arya said. Play it right at the pod entrance, the last track began. Danny walked into the escape bay, saw the pod with its door open, speaker playing music from inside. He stopped at the entrance and looked confused. The music was inside the pod, but why would music be playing in an escape pod? That seemed weird. On the bridge, Arya saw him hesitate. No. Don't start thinking. Just get in. Danny stood there considering. His simple mind tried to make sense of the situation. Music playing in an escape pod? That was unusual. Why would someone do that? The question itself was too complex. It required reasoning, speculation, strategic thinking about intentions and purposes. And in the empty space where the creatures had been, a ripple appeared in reality. One of them was returning, drawn by the sudden spike in Danny's neural activity as he tried to solve the puzzle of the music. Arya saw it on the sensors. We're losing him. Perish ideas now. Parish's mind raced. They needed something immediate. Something that would override Danny's attempt to think. Something that would return him to simple, present-moment awareness. Cut the music, he said suddenly. Cut it and play something he doesn't like. Something annoying. Do it, Arya snapped. The music changed abruptly to a high-pitched electronic noise. Danny winced. That sounded terrible. He stepped back from the pod. The question about why music was playing completely forgotten, replaced by simple aversion to an unpleasant sound. He turned to walk away. No, Arya whispered. They'd lost him. The reactor would explode in 19 minutes and Danny was walking away from the only escape. Then Danny stopped. He looked back at the pod, at the speaker making that awful noise. Someone had left that running. It was bothering him. He should turn it off. That was the polite thing to do. He stepped into the pod and looked for the off switch. Close the door, Arya ordered. Launch sequence now. The pod door slid shut. Danny looked up, startled, as restraints automatically wrapped around him. The launch sequence initiated. The pod shot out of the bay and into space, accelerating away from Horizon 7. Danny sat strapped in, confused, watching through the small window as the station shrank behind him. That was weird. He hadn't meant to launch himself into space. He'd just been trying to turn off that annoying sound. Now he was in an escape pod, heading away from the station, and he had no idea why. In the pod's speaker, the noise stopped. A calm voice spoke instead. Please remain seated. You are being recovered by Galactic Union fleet vessels. You are safe. Danny thought about this. He was safe, apparently. Okay, that was good, he guessed. He leaned back in the seat. The pod had pretty good cushioning. He closed his eyes and wondered if anyone would let him go back to sleep once this was over. Whatever this was, Arya's stomach dropped. Perish if he encounters them again. As long as his mental state doesn't change, he should be fine. They've ignored him before. But if something triggers strategic thinking, if he suddenly understands the danger... Danny turned a corner and entered the central hub. Both creatures were there, their massive forms of flowing darkness filling the space. Their crystalline cores pulsed with purple light. They were communicating in their own way, preparing to leave the station. Danny saw them. For the first time, he really looked at them. His mind, simple and direct, processed what he saw. Big things, dark, kind of pretty with the glowing parts. They were blocking the corridor where the music was coming from. He stopped walking and waited politely for them to move. On the Swift Justice, every person on the bridge held their breath. The creature's cores rotated toward Danny. They scanned him again, this time with what seemed like curiosity. One of them shifted closer, its form flowing through the air like smoke underwater. Danny stood still. He wasn't frozen in fear. He was just waiting. In his mind, there was no panic, no survival instinct kicking in. Just a patient acceptance that sometimes things were in your way and you had to wait for them to move. Like waiting for an elevator or standing in line at the cafeteria. The creature's core pulsed brightly, casting purple light across Danny's face. He blinked. The light was pretty bright. Kind of annoying, actually. His expression shifted to mild irritation. The creature withdrew. Both entities moved toward the far wall of the hub, their forms beginning to shimmer as they prepared to phase out of normal space. Danny, no longer blocked, continued walking toward where the music was playing. He rounded the corner and the song changed to another track. He smiled slightly. "This was a good one. He's past them," the sensor officer said, his voice filled with disbelief. "He's heading toward the escape bay." "Keep playing the music," Arya ordered. "Don't stop." They played song after song, creating a path through Horizon 7. Danny followed, humming along, occasionally stopping to listen to a particularly good chorus. He had no idea he was being rescued. He just liked the music and had nothing better to do than follow it. 22 minutes until reactor failure. Danny was 3 corridors away from the escape bay. The creatures had fully phased out, returning to whatever dimensional space they came from. The station was clear. All they had to do was get Danny into a pod and launch him before the reactor went critical. "Final song," Arya said. "Play it right at the pod entrance," the last track began. Danny walked into the escape bay, saw the pod with its door open, speaker playing music from inside. He stopped at the entrance and looked confused. The music was inside the pod, but why would music be playing in an escape pod? That seemed weird. On the bridge, Arya saw him hesitate. No. Don't start thinking. Just get in." Danny stood there considering. His simple mind tried to make sense of the situation. Music playing in an escape pod? That was unusual. Why would someone do that? The question itself was too complex. It required reasoning, speculation, strategic thinking about intentions and purposes. And in the empty space where the creatures had been, a ripple appeared in reality. One of them was returning, drawn by the sudden spike in Danny's neural activity as he tried to solve the puzzle of the music. Arya saw it on the sensors. "We're losing him." Perish ideas now. Parish's mind raced. They needed something immediate. Something that would override Danny's attempt to think. Something that would return him to simple, present-moment awareness. "Cut the music," he said suddenly. "Cut it and play something he doesn't like. Something annoying." "Do it," Arya snapped. The music changed abruptly to a high-pitched electronic noise. Danny winced. That sounded terrible. He stepped back from the pod. The question about why music was playing completely forgotten, replaced by simple aversion to an unpleasant sound. He turned to walk away. "No," Arya whispered. They'd lost him. The reactor would explode in 19 minutes and Danny was walking away from the only escape. The music changed abruptly to a high-pitched electronic noise. Danny winced. That sounded terrible. He stepped back from the pod, the question about why music was playing completely forgotten, replaced by simple aversion to an unpleasant sound. He turned to walk away. "No," Arya whispered. They'd lost him. The reactor would explode in 19 minutes and Danny was walking away from the only escape. Then Danny stopped. He looked back at the pod, at the speaker making that awful noise. Someone had left that running. It was bothering him. He should turn it off. That was the polite thing to do. He stepped into the pod and looked for the off switch. "Close the door," Arya ordered. "Launch sequence now." The pod door slid shut. Danny looked up, startled, as restraints automatically wrapped around him. The launch sequence initiated. The pod shot out of the bay and into space, accelerating away from Horizon 7. Danny sat strapped in, confused, watching through the small window as the station shrank behind him. That was weird. He hadn't meant to launch himself into space. He'd just been trying to turn off that annoying sound. Now he was in an escape pod heading away from the station, and he had no idea why. In the pod's speaker, the noise stopped. A calm voice spoke instead. "Please remain seated. You are being recovered by Galactic Union fleet vessels. You are safe." Danny thought about this. He was safe, apparently. Okay, that was good, he guessed. He leaned back in the seat. The pod had pretty good cushioning. He closed his eyes and wondered if anyone would let him go back to sleep once this was over. Whatever this was. The recovery bay of the Swift Justice smelled like metal and recycled air. Danny sat on an examination table while a medical officer scanned him with equipment that beeped softly. The officer, a woman with kind eyes and tired features, kept glancing at him like he was a puzzle she couldn't solve. Danny didn't mind. People looked at him like that a lot. He just wanted to know when he could go back to sleep. "How do you feel?" the medical officer asked. "Tired," Danny said. "My back hurts from all the crawling through maintenance tunnels." She blinked. "You're experiencing no trauma? No shock, no emotional distress?" "Should I be?" The medical officer opened her mouth, closed it, then made a note on her tablet. "You're physically healthy. No injuries. I'm clearing you for the interview with Commander Sato." Danny nodded. He didn't know who Commander Sato was, but people seemed to think it was important that he talk to her. They'd told him that 3 times while bringing him aboard the ship. He figured he'd just answer whatever questions she had and then maybe find somewhere to sleep. The escape pod had been comfortable, but they'd woken him up too quickly. Commander Arya Sato entered the medical bay with 2 other officers. Danny recognized military posture. His guardian had been military once before becoming a civilian engineer. All these people stood the same way, moved with the same careful purpose. Arya studied Danny for a long moment before speaking. "I'm Commander Sato. This is Dr. Parrish, our xenopsychologist, and Lieutenant Torres, my second officer. We need to ask you some questions about what happened on Horizon 7. "Okay," Danny said. "Did I do something wrong?" "I finished all my maintenance checks before I left." A strange expression crossed Arya's face. "No, you didn't do anything wrong. We need to understand how you survived. 2 Class Alpha X entities boarded your station. They killed everyone except you. We need to know how." Danny thought about this. "What's a Class Alpha X entity?" Dr. Parrish leaned forward. "The creatures. The large ones with the glowing cores. You encountered them multiple times. Do you remember seeing them?" "Oh, those," Danny said. "Yeah, I saw them. They were blocking the corridors a few times. I waited for them to move." "You waited," Arya repeated slowly. "You saw Galaxy-class predators, the most dangerous known life forms in recorded history, and you waited for them to move out of your way. Was I supposed to do something else?" The 3 officers exchanged glances. Dr. Parrish pulled out his tablet and began making notes. Lieutenant Torres looked like she wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. Arya pulled up a chair and sat down, putting herself at Danny's eye level. "Danny, I'm going to be very direct with you. Those creatures killed 46 people on your station in less than an hour. Elite soldiers died. Brilliant scientists died. People with the best training, the best equipment, the best tactical minds in the galaxy. They all died. You survived. We need to understand why," Danny shrugged. "I don't know. I was just doing my job. Checking panels. Listening to music. When you saw the creatures, what did you think?" "I didn't really think anything. They were just there. Like furniture, I guess, but alive and glowing." Dr. Parrish spoke gently. "Did you feel afraid?" Danny considered this. "No, should I have been?" "Yes," all 3 officers said at once. "Oh." Danny wasn't sure what to do with that information. He hadn't felt afraid because he hadn't understood there was anything to be afraid of. Even now, sitting in the recovery bay being told these creatures were deadly, he couldn't quite make himself care. They'd moved out of his way when he needed to pass. That seemed fine. Arya stood and paced. Danny could see her thinking hard, the way people did when they were trying to solve a complex problem. He never thought that hard about anything. It seemed exhausting. "We saved your life by playing music through the station speakers," Arya said. "You followed it to the escape bay. Did you know that's what we were doing? People were playing music? I thought the station's entertainment system was broken. It doesn't usually play in the corridors. You didn't realize it was a rescue attempt, was that what it was?" Danny looked genuinely surprised. "I just followed the music because it sounded nice." Lieutenant Torres made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. He survived the deadliest predators in the galaxy because he wanted to hear better music. Dr. Parrish had been writing continuously. He looked up at Arya. "Commander, I'd like to run some cognitive tests." "With Danny's permission, of course." "Tests?" Danny asked. "Nothing invasive, just some questions and simple tasks. To understand how your mind processes information." Danny didn't see why not. He had nothing else to do. "Okay." They moved to a private room. Dr. Parrish set up a tablet with various tests on it. Danny worked through them, answering questions, solving puzzles, completing tasks. Some were easy. Most were boring. A few made no sense to him at all, so he guessed. After an hour, Dr. Parrish compiled the results. Danny scored below average on strategic thinking, pattern recognition, and future planning. He scored average on memory and basic reasoning. He scored unusually high on present moment awareness and task focus, but only for simple, immediate tasks. His mind didn't wander toward complex analysis. It wandered toward simple pleasures and immediate needs. "You're not unintelligent," Dr. Parrish told him. "Your mind just works differently. You experience the world directly, without layers of analysis. Most people see a situation and immediately start calculating, planning, projecting into the future. You see a situation and respond to it exactly as it is in that moment. No more, no less," Danny nodded. That sounded right, though he didn't fully understand what Dr. Parrish meant by layers of analysis. He just lived. What was complicated about that? Arya received the test results and read them 3 times. The data confirmed what they'd observed. Danny Foster had survived because his mind operated below the frequency that attracted Alpha X entities. He wasn't hiding from them or fighting them or outsmarting them. He simply existed in a way they didn't find interesting. "This is going to change everything," Lieutenant Torres said quietly. "If word gets out that a human survived an Alpha X encounter—" "It already is out," Arya replied. "The entire fleet knows. By tomorrow, every Union military command will know. By next week, the galactic news networks will know. Danny Foster is about to become the most famous human in the galaxy." In the private room, Danny had fallen asleep in his chair. The tests had been boring, and he was still tired from his shift. Dr. Parrish watched him sleep. This ordinary boy who'd done something impossible without trying, without knowing, without caring. 3 days later, Danny found himself on a Union transport headed for a military research facility. They wanted to study him, they said. Not in a bad way, just to understand. They promised he'd be comfortable. They'd give him his own quarters, good food, access to entertainment. All he had to do was answer questions and let them observe him. Danny agreed because he didn't have anywhere else to go. Horizon 7 was destroyed. His guardian was dead. He had no family, no home, no plans for the future. A research facility seemed as good as anywhere else. The transport carried him past 3 different star systems. Other passengers, military personnel, and scientists stared at him with open curiosity. He was the boy who survived, the impossible survivor, the one who walked past death itself without noticing. Danny put in his earbuds and listened to music, watching stars drift past through the viewport. They looked pretty. He wondered if the research facility would have good food. He hoped so. The transport's meal packs weren't very filling. A young soldier approached nervously. "Excuse me, are you Danny Foster?" "Yeah, is it true?" "Did you really survive 2 Alpha X entities?" "I guess so." "That's what people keep telling me." The soldier waited for more. When Danny didn't elaborate, he asked, "How did you do it? What's the secret?" Danny thought about this. "What's a Class Alpha X entity?" Dr. Parrish leaned forward. "The creatures, the large ones with the glowing cores. You encountered them multiple times. Do you remember seeing them?" "Oh, those," Danny said. "Yeah, I saw them. They were blocking the corridors a few times. I waited for them to move." "You waited?" Arya repeated slowly. "You saw galaxy-class predators, the most dangerous known life forms in recorded history, and you waited for them to move out of your way. Was I supposed to do something else?" The 3 officers exchanged glances. Dr. Parrish pulled out his tablet and began making notes. Lieutenant Torres looked like she wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. Arya pulled up a chair and sat down, putting herself at Danny's eye level. "Danny, I'm going to be very direct with you. Those creatures killed 46 people on your station in less than an hour. Elite soldiers died. Brilliant scientists died. People with the best training, the best equipment, the best tactical minds in the galaxy. They all died. You survived. We need to understand why. Danny shrugged. I don't know. I was just doing my job. Checking panels. Listening to music. When you saw the creatures, what did you think? I didn't really think anything. They were just there. Like furniture, I guess, but alive and glowing. Dr. Parrish spoke gently. Did you feel afraid? Danny considered this. No, should I have been? Yes, all three officers said at once. Oh. Danny wasn't sure what to do with that information. He hadn't felt afraid because he hadn't understood there was anything to be afraid of. Even now, sitting in the recovery bay being told these creatures were deadly, he couldn't quite make himself care. They'd moved out of his way when he needed to pass. That seemed fine. Arya stood and paced. Danny could see her thinking hard, the way people did when they were trying to solve a complex problem. He never thought that hard about anything. It seemed exhausting. We saved your life by playing music through the station speakers, Arya said. You followed it to the escape bay. Did you know that's what we were doing? People were playing music? I thought the station's entertainment system was broken. It doesn't usually play in the corridors. You didn't realize it was a rescue attempt. Was that what it was? Danny looked genuinely surprised. I just followed the music because it sounded nice. Lieutenant Torres made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. He survived the deadliest predators in the galaxy because he wanted to hear better music. Dr. Parrish had been writing continuously. He looked up at Arya. Commander, I'd like to run some cognitive tests. With Danny's permission, of course. Tests? Danny asked. Nothing invasive. Just some questions and simple tasks. To understand how your mind processes information. Danny didn't see why not. He had nothing else to do. Okay. They moved to a private room. Dr. Parrish set up a tablet with various tests on it. Danny worked through them, answering questions, solving puzzles, completing tasks. Some were easy. Most were boring. A few made no sense to him at all, so he guessed. After an hour, Dr. Parrish compiled the results. Danny scored below average on strategic thinking, pattern recognition, and future planning. He scored average on memory and basic reasoning. He scored unusually high on present moment awareness and task focus, but only for simple, immediate tasks. His mind didn't wander toward complex analysis. It wandered toward simple pleasures and immediate needs. You're not unintelligent, Dr. Parrish told him. Your mind just works differently. You experience the world directly without layers of analysis. Most people see a situation and immediately start calculating, planning, projecting into the future. You see a situation and respond to it exactly as it is in that moment. No more, no less, Danny nodded. That sounded right. Though he didn't fully understand what Dr. Parrish meant by layers of analysis. He just lived. What was complicated about that? Arya received the test results and read them 3 times. The data confirmed what they'd observed. Danny Foster had survived because his mind operated below the frequency that attracted Alpha X entities. He wasn't hiding from them or fighting them or outsmarting them. He simply existed in a way they didn't find interesting. This is going to change everything, Lieutenant Torres said quietly. If word gets out that a human survived an Alpha X encounter, it already is out, Arya replied. The entire fleet knows. By tomorrow, every Union military command will know. By next week, the galactic news networks will know. Danny Foster is about to become the most famous human in the galaxy. In the private room, Danny had fallen asleep in his chair. The tests had been boring and he was still tired from his shift. Dr. Parrish watched him sleep. This ordinary boy who'd done something impossible without trying, without knowing, without caring. 3 days later, Danny found himself on a Union transport headed for a military research facility. They wanted to study him, they said. Not in a bad way, just to understand. They promised he'd be comfortable. They'd give him his own quarters, good food, access to entertainment. All he had to do was answer questions and let them observe him. Danny agreed because he didn't have anywhere else to go. Horizon 7 was destroyed. His guardian was dead. He had no family, no home, no plans for the future. A research facility seemed as good as anywhere else. The transport carried him past 3 different star systems. Other passengers, military personnel, and scientists stared at him with open curiosity. He was the boy who survived, the impossible survivor, the one who walked past death itself without noticing. Danny put in his earbuds and listened to music, watching stars drift past through the viewport. They looked pretty. He wondered if the research facility would have good food. He hoped so. The transport's meal packs weren't very filling. A young soldier approached nervously. "Excuse me, are you Danny Foster?" "Yeah, is it true? Did you really survive 2 Alpha X entities?" "I guess so. That's what people keep telling me." The soldier waited for more. When Danny didn't elaborate, he asked, "How did you do it? What's the secret?" Danny thought about this. People kept asking him that question. He never knew how to answer it. "I don't think there is a secret. I just didn't know I was supposed to be scared. But now you know. Now you understand what happened." "Are you scared now?" Danny considered his feelings carefully. Fear was supposed to be this big emotion, this overwhelming thing. He tried to find it inside himself. Tried to imagine the creatures, the danger, the fact that he should have died. But it all felt distant, like a story about someone else. "No," he said finally. "I still don't really get what the big deal is." The soldier shook his head in amazement and walked away. Danny returned to his music. The song playing was one of his favorites. Simple melody, good rhythm. He closed his eyes and let it carry him toward sleep. On the bridge of the transport, the pilot received an urgent message from Union Command. Priority level maximum. New protocols were being established. The Foster Protocol, they were calling it. When Alpha X entities were detected, new response strategies would be implemented. Strategies based on what they'd learned from one ordinary boy who survived by being exactly what he was. But protocols required understanding. They required analysis and tactical planning and strategic implementation, all the things that made prey visible to Alpha X entities. The Union's best minds were trying to weaponize Danny's survival, trying to turn his accidental success into deliberate technique. They didn't understand yet that it couldn't be taught, couldn't be trained, couldn't be replicated by anyone who understood what they were trying to do. Danny slept through the priority transmission. He slept through the pilot's discussion with command. He slept through the transport's arrival at the research facility. A medical officer had to gently shake him awake. "We're here," she said kindly. "Welcome to Research Station Apollo." Danny yawned and gathered his few possessions. A backpack with some spare clothes, his music player, a maintenance manual he'd been using as a pillow. Everything he owned in the galaxy fit in one small bag. He followed the medical officer down the corridor, looking around at his new temporary home with mild interest. The facility was nice, clean, quiet. His quarters were larger than his space on Horizon 7 had been. They showed him the cafeteria, the recreation areas, the research labs where he'd be spending time. Everyone was very polite, very careful with him, like he was fragile or precious or both. That night, lying in his new bunk, Danny listened to music and thought about nothing in particular. Somewhere in the galaxy, military strategists were analyzing every second of his survival. Scientists were modeling his brain patterns. Philosophers were debating what his existence meant for human consciousness and intelligence. Danny thought about breakfast tomorrow. He hoped they had the good cereal. Then he fell asleep, the most important human in the galaxy, dreaming simple dreams about simple things, unaware that he'd become a symbol of something the universe was only beginning to understand. Research Station Apollo buzzed with activity that Danny mostly ignored. Scientists filled the corridors, carrying tablets and discussing theories in urgent voices. Military officers held meetings behind closed doors. News crews from a dozen different species requested interviews. Everyone wanted to understand the boy who'd survived the impossible. Danny spent most of his time in the recreation room, listening to music and occasionally playing simple games on a provided tablet. Sometimes people would come to observe him. They'd sit quietly in the corner with their recording equipment, watching him do absolutely nothing interesting. He'd asked once why they were watching. They'd said it was important to document his natural behavior. He'd shrugged and gone back to his game. Dr. Parrish visited every day. Their sessions were more like conversations than tests now. Parrish had given up on complex analysis. He'd learned more by just talking with Danny about regular things. What music he liked, what foods he preferred, what he thought about when he wasn't thinking about anything in particular. "That's the question everyone struggles with," Parrish said during one session. "What do you think about when you're not thinking about anything?" Danny considered this. "I don't know. Just whatever's happening right then, I guess. Like right now I'm thinking that your coffee smells good and the chair I'm sitting in is kind of uncomfortable, and there's a mark on the wall over there that looks like a bird." Parrish made notes. You stay in the present moment. You don't plan ahead much, not really. What's the point? Things change anyway. Most people find comfort in planning. It makes them feel prepared. Prepared for what? Parrish smiled. It was a good question. Prepared for danger. For the future, for things that might never happen. Humans spent enormous mental energy on preparation. So did most intelligent species. It was considered a sign of advancement. But maybe that advancement came with a cost they'd never calculated. News of Danny's survival had spread through the Galactic Union faster than anyone expected. Within a week, every major news network was running stories about the human who'd walked past death. The stories got more dramatic with each retelling. Some called him a miracle. Others called him humanity's secret weapon. A few suggested he had hidden powers he wasn't revealing. Danny watched one of these news reports in the recreation room. A serious-looking anchor discussed his unprecedented survival technique and revolutionary approach to Alpha X encounters. Danny thought that was funny. He didn't have a technique or an approach. He'd just been walking around. "They're making me sound a lot more interesting than I am," he said to the empty room. But the galaxy disagreed. Research Station Apollo received thousands of messages. Military commands wanted to study him. Scientists wanted to understand him. Other survivors of various traumas wanted to meet him, to learn his secret for staying calm. Danny read a few of the messages, got overwhelmed, and stopped reading them. Commander Arya Sato visited in the third week. She found Danny in the cafeteria, eating lunch and watching a video on his tablet. She sat across from him without asking. "How are you adjusting?" she asked. "It's okay. The food's pretty good here. Better than on Horizon 7, Arya studied him. She'd spent the past 3 weeks trying to understand what she'd learned during the rescue. She'd been trained her entire career to think tactically, to plan strategically, to always stay alert. Those skills had made her an excellent commander. But she'd also realized they were chains. Her mind never rested. It was always calculating, always preparing, always 3 steps ahead of the present moment. "I've been practicing something," Arya said, "based on what I learned from you." "From me? I didn't teach you anything. You taught me without meaning to. I've been trying to just exist in the moment sometimes, not thinking about tactics or plans. Just being present. How's that going?" "Terribly," Arya laughed. "I can manage it for maybe 30 seconds before my mind starts working again. But those 30 seconds feel different, calmer." Danny nodded. "That's nice. The Union wants to create special units based on your survival. People trained to think like you when facing Alpha X entities." "That sounds weird." "How do you train someone to not think?" "That's exactly the problem. Every attempt fails. The act of training requires strategic thought. The moment someone tries to replicate what you did, they've already failed because they're trying. You weren't trying to survive. You just were." Danny ate a bite of his meal. "So what are they going to do?" "They're calling it the Foster Protocol. When Alpha X entities are detected, they're going to look for people like you, people who naturally exist below the predator threshold. Not soldiers or scientists, just ordinary people who live simply in the present moment. There are others like me." "We think so. We're testing people across all human colonies, looking for the same cognitive patterns you showed. The early results suggest about 3% of humans have what you have, this natural, unforced present moment awareness." Danny thought about that. 3% of billions of humans. That was a lot of people. He'd always thought he was just kind of slow. It was strange to learn that his way of thinking had a name now. That it was valuable instead of something people looked down on. Across the galaxy, the testing had begun. Volunteers sat through the same cognitive assessments Danny had completed. Most failed. Their minds worked too quickly, analyzed too much, planned too far ahead. But some, a small percentage, showed the pattern. People who'd always felt out of step with a society that valued complex thinking. People who'd been called simple or lazy or unmotivated. Now they were being called potential lifesavers. A mining colony on the edge of Union space reported they had 5 candidates. A farming community had 12. A transport ship had 2 crew members who matched the profile. The Foster Protocol was building a database of people who might survive what no one else could. Not everyone agreed with the protocol. Military hardliners argued it was madness to rely on people who couldn't think strategically. Scientists worried about what message it sent to value simple thinking over intelligence. Philosophers debated whether survival at the cost of awareness was worth it. Danny ignored all of this. He spent his days in comfortable routine. Morning meals in the cafeteria. Sessions with Dr. Parrish that were more social than scientific now. Afternoons listening to music or playing simple games. Evenings watching the stars through the observation windows. His life had structure without complexity. He existed without the burden of constant analysis. Lieutenant Torres visited one afternoon. She'd been struggling with the lessons from Horizon 7. She was a tactical officer trained to analyze and respond. Her mind never stopped working. It was exhausting her. How do you do it? She asked Danny. How do you just not worry? I don't know. I've never really worried much. Things either happen or they don't. Worrying doesn't change it. But you must think about the future sometimes. Make plans, sometimes. Like I know I need to eat later, so I should probably figure out what I want. But that's not really a plan. That's just knowing I'll be hungry. Torres sat with this. I envy you. My mind runs constantly. Even when I'm trying to relax, I'm thinking about duty rosters, tactical scenarios, potential threats. I can't turn it off. Why would you want to turn it off? That's just how you are. Because it nearly got me killed. When we rescued you, I was calculating every possible outcome, running through every scenario. If I'd been on that station instead of you, I'd be dead. My intelligence would have killed me. Danny didn't know what to say to that. It seemed sad that being smart could be dangerous. But he understood what she meant. He'd seen it on Horizon 7. All the brilliant people had died first. Their minds had made them targets. 6 months passed. The Foster Protocol became official Union policy. Special identification was created for confirmed candidates. They wore simple badges that marked them as potential first responders in Alpha X situations. Not because they could fight or strategize, but because they might walk through danger without triggering it. Danny received his badge in a small ceremony. Dr. Parrish presented it to him in the recreation room. No fanfare, no speeches. Just a quiet acknowledgement of what he was. You don't have to use this, Parrish said. No one's going to force you into dangerous situations. But if Alpha X entities appear again and you're nearby, you might be called upon. To do what? Just be yourself. Walk through areas others can't. Guide people to safety by having them follow you. Simple presence. Danny looked at the badge. It was just a small piece of metal with some symbols on it. It didn't feel important. Okay, he said and put it in his pocket. That night, alone in his quarters, Danny thought about the past 6 months. His life had changed completely. He'd gone from a maintenance worker nobody noticed to someone the galaxy was studying. He'd gone from being considered slow to being considered valuable. But he didn't feel different. He was still just Danny, still living moment to moment, still thinking simple thoughts about simple things. His music player sat on the bedside table. He picked it up and scrolled through his songs. The same ones he'd been listening to on Horizon 7. Nothing had changed there. The music was still good, still made him feel calm. He selected a favorite and let it play. Somewhere in the galaxy, Alpha X entities drifted through dimensional space, hunting for complex thought. Somewhere, brilliant minds were working on strategies and protocols and plans. Somewhere, people were afraid of what might come next. Danny closed his eyes and listened to his music. Tomorrow he'd have breakfast. Maybe try that cereal he'd seen in the cafeteria. Maybe take a walk through the observation deck. Simple plans. Simple existence. In a galaxy that had learned to fear intelligence as vulnerability, Danny Foster represented something new. Not a weapon or a tool, but a reminder that sometimes the most powerful thing a person could be was simply, genuinely themselves. The song played on. Danny fell asleep halfway through, peaceful and untroubled, while the galaxy continued trying to understand the boy who'd survived by not understanding anything at all. 3 years after Horizon 7, Danny received a call that pulled him from his afternoon routine. He'd been living on Research Station Apollo the entire time, working simple maintenance jobs again because he'd asked for something to do. The scientists had been happy to give him work. It kept him comfortable and gave them more opportunities to observe his natural behavior. Everyone won. The call came from Commander Aria Sato. She appeared on his room's communication screen, her expression serious but not urgent. Danny had learned to read her over the past 3 years. She visited regularly, usually to talk about ordinary things. She said talking with him helped her find calm in her hectic military life. Danny, we have a situation. I need to ask if you're willing to help. What kind of situation? Alpha X entities. 2 of them. They've appeared at a commercial station in the Outer Belt. Civilian station, mostly families. About 200 people trapped there. Danny felt a distant sensation that might have been concern. 200 people was a lot. What do you need me to do? The same thing you did before. Walk through the station. Your presence seems to create a safe path. If people follow you closely, staying near you, they don't trigger the predator's hunting response. We've tested this theory in simulations, but we've never had a chance to try it in a real situation. Until now. I won't lie to you. This is dangerous. Not for you, probably. Your mind works in a way these creatures ignore. But if something goes wrong, if something changes, you could die. Danny thought about this. People were trapped. People were dying. He could help by just walking around, which was something he did anyway. Okay, I'll help. Arya's expression softened with relief and something else. Respect, maybe. A ship will pick you up in 30 minutes. I'll be commanding the operation. Thank you, Danny. The transport to the Outer Belt station took 6 hours. Danny spent most of it sleeping. The crew watched him with a mixture of awe and confusion. This was the legendary survivor, the boy who'd walked past death. He was napping in the crew quarters like he was heading to a routine maintenance job. Commander Sato briefed him when they arrived. The station, called Trading Post 7, hung in space ahead of them. Scans showed both Alpha X entities inside, moving through different sections. They'd already taken 37 people. 163 remained scattered throughout the station in various hiding places. Your job is simple, Arya said. We'll guide you through the station. You walk your normal path. Survivors will follow behind you at a distance. Not too close, not too far. About 10 meters. Close enough that your presence masks them. Far enough that they're not directly interacting with you. What if they panic? Danny asked. That's the risk. If someone panics, if their mind spikes with fear and strategic thinking, they become visible. The creatures will take them. We've trained the survivors as best we can through the station's communication system. They understand they need to stay calm, stay in the moment, follow without planning. Danny nodded. It made sense, sort of. He still didn't fully understand why his way of thinking protected people, but everyone seemed confident it would work. The boarding pod attached to Trading Post 7's emergency airlock. Danny stepped through wearing simple station coveralls, the same kind he'd worn on Horizon 7. He carried nothing but his music player. Arya had offered him protective gear, weapons, communication devices. He'd declined them all. They'd just be things to think about, to manage, to strategize with. Better to stay simple. The station's corridors were dark except for emergency lighting. Danny's footsteps echoed in the silence. He put in his earbuds and started walking. Arya's voice came through a small speaker clipped to his collar. Survivors in Section B are ready. They'll start following once you pass their location. Danny walked at his usual pace, unhurried, his mind occupied with his music. A good song was playing. Simple melody. He hummed along quietly. Behind him, 10 meters back, 12 people emerged from a storage room. They moved carefully, quietly, trying to maintain calm, trying not to think about the predators hunting through the station. One of the creatures appeared ahead, flowing through the corridor like smoke given weight. Its crystalline core rotated, pulsing with purple light. Danny saw it and slowed his pace, not from fear, but because something was blocking his path again. The creature's core focused on him, scanning. The same pattern as before. The same dismissal. It shifted to the side. Danny walked past. The 12 survivors behind him held their breath. Some closed their eyes. Others focused on Danny's back, using him as an anchor point. Something simple to concentrate on instead of the creature. The creature's core rotated toward them, detected the group, but the neural signatures were muted, blurred, hidden behind the strange, uninteresting presence of the boy walking ahead. The creature moved on, searching for more interesting prey. It's working, Arya said over the speaker. Her voice carried disbelief and relief. Section B survivors are following successfully, moving them toward the evacuation point. Danny continued through the station. More survivors joined the group behind him. 20 people, 30, 50. A silent parade following a boy who was just walking and listening to music. Some of the survivors were crying, tears streaming down their faces, but they kept their minds focused on simple things. The floor beneath their feet, the rhythm of walking, the shape of Danny's shoulders ahead of them. One of the survivors, a woman named Lisa, felt her mind starting to race. She'd watched her husband die an hour ago, watched a creature consume him while she hid. Her grief threatened to overwhelm her, to spike into the kind of complex emotional processing that would mark her as prey. But she focused on Danny, on his steady walk, on the way he seemed completely unconcerned with everything happening around him. She tried to match his energy. Just walk, just breathe, just exist in this moment. The second creature appeared, blocking a corridor intersection. This one was larger than the first, its core burning brighter. Danny stopped and waited. The creature didn't move. Its core rotated slowly, scanning Danny, then scanning the group behind him. 53 humans. 53 potential sources of neural energy. But the signatures were all wrong. Too dim, too simple. And that strange boy at the front. The one with no fear, no planning, no complexity at all. The creature's core pulsed with what might have been confusion. This wasn't how prey behaved. Prey ran or hid or fought. Prey thought and planned and feared. These humans were doing none of those things. They were just walking behind a boy who didn't seem to understand what was happening. Danny noticed the creature wasn't moving. He tilted his head slightly, looking at it. The creature was kind of pretty up close. The way the core rotated reminded him of those lamps people had, the ones with spinning lights inside. He wondered briefly if he could get a lamp like that for his quarters. The thought was so simple, so unconcerned with survival or danger, that the creature's core dimmed. This wasn't prey, this was something else, something not worth the effort. It flowed backward, up the wall, across the ceiling, and through a vent. Gone. Both creatures are moving away from your position, Arya reported. Keep going. Evacuation point is 200 meters ahead. Danny walked. The survivors followed. They passed through corridors where bodies lay scattered. People who'd tried to hide, tried to fight, tried to think their way out. Intelligence had killed them. Their ability to recognize danger, to plan escape, to calculate survival, all the things that made them successful in normal life had marked them for death here. A child near the back of the group started to panic. He was maybe 8 years old, holding his mother's hand. He'd been brave for an hour, but his control was slipping. His mind was starting to process what he'd seen, starting to understand the danger. His mother felt him tensing, felt his fear rising. "Look at the boy in front," she whispered. "Just look at him. See how calm he is? We're going to be just like him, calm and quiet." The child focused on Danny, on his relaxed posture, on the way he walked like this was a normal day. The fear receded slightly, not gone but managed. The child kept walking. They reached the evacuation point, a docking bay where Union ships waited. Danny walked through the airlock first. The survivors followed, finally allowing themselves to feel relief, to think about safety, to plan for what came next. The moment they were on the ships, their minds could work again. The danger was past, except for 5 people still trapped in the station's lower levels. The communication system had failed in that section. They didn't know about the evacuation. They didn't know to follow Danny. "I need to go back," Danny said. Arya shook her head. "It's too dangerous. We've saved 96% of the survivors. That's an incredible success rate, but there are still 5 people. Danny, those creatures are still hunting. Every minute you spend in there increases the risk." Danny looked at the station through the docking bay window. 5 people. Probably scared. Definitely alone. "I'll just walk down there and walk back." Same as before. Arya wanted to argue, but she saw something in Danny's expression. Not determination or bravery. Just simple certainty. Those people needed help. He could help them. Therefore, he would help them. No complex reasoning. No heroic decision. Just obvious action. 15 minutes, Arya said. "If you're not back in 15 minutes, I'm coming in after you." Danny returned to the station. The lower levels were darker, the emergency lighting failing. He used a flashlight someone had given him, pointing it ahead as he walked. His music was still playing. Same playlist he'd been listening to for 3 years. Familiar songs, comfortable. He found the 5 survivors huddled in a maintenance room. They looked up in terror when the door opened, then confusion when they saw a teenager with a flashlight. "Hi," Danny said. "There are ships waiting. We should go. Who are you?" One of them asked. "I'm Danny. I'm here to walk you out. The creatures are somewhere else right now. Come on." They followed him because they had no better option. Danny led them back through the corridors, his pace steady, his mind occupied with his music and the slight ache in his feet from walking so much. The 5 survivors stayed close, mimicking his calm. Both creatures appeared simultaneously, converging from different corridors. They blocked the path to the docking bay, their cores bright with renewed hunting intensity. Danny stopped. The 5 survivors froze in fear, their minds spiking with terror. For a moment, the creature's attention fixed on the group. 5 minds suddenly blazing with complex thought. Fear, strategy, desperate calculation. They were visible. They were prey, but between the creatures and the survivors stood Danny. His mind quiet, his thoughts simple. He was thinking that the creatures were blocking the way again, and wondering how long he'd have to wait this time. He hoped it wouldn't be too long. He was getting tired. The creatures' cores pulsed, trying to lock onto the 5 survivors. But Danny's presence interfered, like a dead zone in their perception. The signatures behind him were there, but blurred, uncertain. And this boy in front, this strange human with the quiet mind, was stepping forward. Danny walked toward the creatures. Not bravely, not strategically. He was just trying to get past them. "Excuse me," he said quietly, the way someone might excuse themselves in a crowded hallway. The first creature moved aside. The second followed. A path opened between them. Danny walked through, calm and unhurried. The 5 survivors followed, their terror giving way to stunned disbelief. They walked between 2 Alpha X entities, the deadliest predators in the known galaxy, because a teenage boy had asked them politely to move. They reached the docking bay. The ships launched. Trading Post 7 fell silent behind them, empty except for the creatures who would leave soon, returning to dimensional space. Their feeding incomplete but sufficient, on the ship. The survivors from the lower levels sat in the recovery bay, trying to process what they'd experienced. They'd walked past death itself. They'd survived because of a boy who'd said "excuse me" to monsters. Danny found a quiet corner and sat down. His feet hurt. His back was sore from all the walking. He was hungry and tired, simple physical discomforts that occupied his mind completely. Someone brought him food. Someone else brought him water. People kept thanking him. He accepted their thanks politely but didn't quite understand why they seemed so emotional about it. Arya found him an hour later. She sat beside him without speaking for a long moment. Finally she said, "You saved 163 people today." "Okay. That's all you have to say?" "Okay. What else should I say?" Arya laughed, the sound carrying 3 years of trying to understand this boy. "Nothing. That's perfect." She stood to leave, then paused. "You know what the remarkable thing is? You've changed the galaxy. You've proven that intelligence isn't always survival, that simplicity has power, that sometimes the best strategy is having no strategy at all. Philosophers are going to study you for centuries." Danny thought about this. That sounds weird. It is weird. But it's also beautiful. You're teaching us something we forgot, how to just be. After she left, Danny pulled out his music player. The battery was low. He'd need to charge it soon. He made a mental note, simple and immediate. Charge the music player, eat dinner, sleep. Tomorrow would bring whatever it brought. He'd handle it the way he always had. One moment at a time, one simple thought at a time. In the years that followed, the Foster Protocol saved thousands of lives. More people like Danny were found and trained, not to think differently, but to embrace how they already thought. The galaxy learned to value what it had dismissed. Simplicity became strength. Present moment awareness became survival. Danny returned to Research Station Apollo and his maintenance work. He'd asked to go back. Life there was comfortable, predictable, simple. Everything he needed. People still studied him, still asked him questions, still tried to understand the mystery of his survival, but there was no mystery. No secret technique. No hidden wisdom. Just a boy who lived in the moment because he didn't know how to live any other way. In a galaxy that had built civilizations on complex thought, on strategic planning, on intelligence and analysis, Danny Foster represented something paradoxically powerful. The strength of not trying, the protection of not knowing, the survival that came from existing simply, honestly, completely in the present moment. He never became a hero in his own mind. Never saw himself as special. He was just Danny, fixing panels and listening to music, living his quiet life. But the galaxy saw something different. They saw proof that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in being the smartest or the strongest or the most advanced. It was in being diverse, in having minds that worked in every possible way, including the simple way, the quiet way, the way that noticed flickering lights and followed music and waited patiently for obstacles to move. The way that walked past death without fear, not because of bravery, but because fear required understanding danger, and Danny had never quite managed to understand that part. He was fine with that. Understanding seemed complicated. Living was easier. So he lived, day by day, moment by moment. The boy who survived because he never tried to, who saved lives by simply being himself, who changed the galaxy by never trying to change anything at all.